Welcome back once more. You're watching Sunday edition here on KTN News. This 14th day of May 2017, exactly 85 days according to our election countdown there on the bottom right corner of your screen. 85 days to the August 8th elections when Kenyans go to the polls to elect their next set of leaders. Less than 3 months basically. And let's now take a look at the state of the race. NASA versus Jubilee, the two sides of the political divide. NASA are preparing to have a rally in Nakuru town today, where all the 5 principals of the National Super Alliance are expected to grace the occasion. Let's now bring in our senior political affairs reporter, Chris Aero, who joins us live from Nakuru. We shall be getting to Chris in a short while to find out what's happening. We understand that the 5 principals are converging in a resort in the town of Nakuru to strategize before that rally that will be happening this afternoon at the FRR Stadium in Nakuru. Shall be going to Nakuru to Chris Airo later on. But gentlemen, let's speak about the state of the race. It's Jubilee versus NASA. Campaigns are not officially on according to the IEBC, but as we speak today, it's a week from last week when we did speak about the state of the race. What's happening in NASA and what's happening in Jubilee? Who is more prepared for the election? Let me start with you, Brian.
Yeah, I think both parties are smarting from shambolic nominations that they witnessed, and most of them are still, addressing the issues of disputes within their internal democracies. And I think now this offers that opportunity for parties now to go back to the drawing board and, design plans that will see them having that competitive edge over the opponents. Nevertheless, we are likely to see, NASA now actually taking their, and we can see they have already started this in Nakuru, and I'm sure Jubilee is also planning something of the sort. And I want to say that as much as IBC is telling us that the campaign process has not yet started officially, this starts from 28th of May. Right now, they do not have that legal jurisdiction to ensure that they curtail people from actually exercising that. Because, as I said before in this show, it's like, a referee who denies players from warming up before a football match. And therefore, we want to see now them actually endearing to the people and actually coming up with the so-called combined manifestos, especially for NASA, because I believe now they have harmonized what Hamani brought on the table, Wiper, ODM, and the other parties. And therefore, now it's just a matter of now, after smarting from that kind of, issues of nomination, is a matter of now us being treated to that kind of tight now competition on issues other than personalized issues in terms of politics. We are likely to see NASA actually propagating the idea of, cost of living as their tool, the issue of corruption as their tool that would want to catapult them to be the managers of the affairs of this country. While Jubilee, on the other hand, Ben, would be actually propagating the idea of development, that this is what they have been doing, this is what they have done for the country, and this is what they want to do for the country in the near when they are given power again.
All right, let's now bring in Chris Tairo, senior political affairs reporter, joining us live from Nakuru. Chris, good morning. I think it's still morning. What can you tell us from Nakuru, preparations for that rally by NASA, and what do we expect from Nakuru? Are all the NASA principals set to be there?
Well, a very good morning to you, Ben, and of course, you, the panelists that you're having in studio. We are coming to you live from Geranium Resort, which is at Ngata area in Nakuru County, where the 5 NASA principals are expected to converge first here and then hold a meeting with the leaders, local leaders, before they head for their first major rally at Afraha Stadium since they unveiled their presidential candidate, that is the ODM party leader, Raila Odinga. And if my cameraman Opondo can just pan a little bit, we have some aspirants here, and of course this is the area that they will be landing. We are still waiting for them. We've seen a number of choppers hovering around here, but up to now none of the principals has arrived. I'll be talking to Dr. Kuros. He's contesting for the Nakuru gubernatorial seat. Well, welcome to KTN News. What do you expect today?
Thank you very much, and for this particular opportunity. Today we expect the rally of all rallies in Nakuru County, NASA rally, which is actually expected to bring together all communities in this country. Nakuru is, as you are aware, is the melting pot of the country, the country of Kenya, and we expect that we will have people from across the divide, even those who are not affiliated to NASA, they are expected to be here. And one of the things that is expected to come out is a historic moment in a view to change the leadership of this country for the better, because we have experienced so many things, even the basic services are not being provided to the common mwananchi, and we expect that as we put in place this leadership today, as we unveiled the presidential candidate a few weeks ago, we expect that as we come together, this will set the pace for subsequent rallies that will be held across the country.
When should we expect the principals to arrive here?
In the next short while, the principals I'm reliably informed that they are having a closed-door meeting now, and soon after that meeting, we expect that they will be here to address people from across the divide, and we have the face of Kenya here. We have people from all communities and leaders across the divide, and also candidates from various parties representing the NASA fraternity, and they are waiting, and we will consult first on the way forward and in the way the meeting in Afra Stadium is expected to be conducted.
There's been that debate on whether Nakuru County is an opposition stronghold or a Jubilee stronghold. What is your view on that?
As I mentioned earlier, I said Nakuru is the melting pot of Kenya. And I want to say this, that particular idea of Nakuru being perceived as a Jubilee stronghold is more of a perception than a reality. The idea is NASA has come and is here to stay. And we are so convinced, and we have the numbers, we have the statistics, we have the goodwill, and we expect that in the next few weeks, Governor Nakuru County, as he speaks, Dr. Koros, will just be sworn in.
Okay.
And it will still also go ahead, and the NASA presidential candidate will be sworn in, because change is now. And if it is not now, it is right now.
Okay, we wish you all the best. That has been Dr. Koros, who is contesting for the Nakuru gubernatorial seat. Of course, he will be facing Lee Kinyanjui, who scooped the Jubilee ticket, as well as the incumbent, that is Kenneth Mbogwa, who has indicated that he'll be vying as an independent candidate. Well, my last interview will be with Dr. Omondi, who is contesting for the senatorial seat in Nakuru County. Well, tell us your expectations today, and which are some of these topics you expect that will be tackled by the principals.
Oh yes. Currently, the biggest topic that is going around is that Kenyans are hungry. They are dissatisfied, and that they are indignified. And we hope that now that we have our presidential candidate, this is now raising a new hope for Kenya. You know, I don't have to tell you that this administration near Jubilee has already raped the economy of this country, and somebody needs to salvage it and charge the Jubilee government in a court of law for raping our economy. So the common man is suffering. The common man needs to eat. They are already disdignified, and they are being sentenced home hungry. So we need to change this.
Which is the solution that you might propose to be offered as an alternative government?
Of course, we are rallying for NASA, and the NASA lineup is very clear. We know that even this shortage of maize is artificial. It's caused by Jubilee government. Just today, we are reading and hearing that the Mexican government has disowned this maize. So this maize, which arrived in Kenya 3 hours after it has been arrived, that it is being imported, it's just another hoax by the Jubilee government. They should tell us what they are doing, what other scandal they are doing with this maize. So this hunger that we are suffering from, and the Kenyans Wanjikos are being subjected to, it is orchestrated and managed by Jubilee government.
Okay, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. That has has been Dr. Otieno, who is contesting for the senatorial seat, Ogada, who is contesting for the senatorial seat in Nakuru County. And Ben will still be waiting for the principals to arrive here before they hold a meeting, and then later head to Afra Stadium, where they expected to hold their first major political rally in Nakuru County after the unveiling of their presidential candidate at Uhuru Park grounds 2 weeks ago, Ben.
Thank you, Chris. Chris Tairo there in Nakuru will be following the proceedings at the historic Afra Stadium. And this was NASA trying to penetrate the Rift Valley. Raila Odinga did say that today is when that notion that Rift Valley is in the pockets of Jubilee and everybody else is an outsider ends. The choice of Nakuru, what does it tell you?
Well, yesterday I saw a campaign poster done by NASA which showed a lot of flamingos, and I thought that was a horrible communication strategy when they showed flamingos in Nakuru. But the reason why Nakuru is important, and the candidate for the Senate, Dr. Monda, has indicated that it's actually a melting point. That's why you find all Kenyans doing their businesses or going on with their factors of production. But more important, you recall Jubilee was actually born and brought up in Nakuru. That's where the Uhuru alliance was cemented. And it's important to note that when President Kenyatta decided that we can have a national day celebrated outside Nairobi, Nakuru was the first place to do the celebration. So it seems to me that Nakuru is the fountain of political capital that Uhuru and Ruto enjoy. And predominantly it's occupied by members of the Kikuyu Nation as well as the Kalenjin Nation. And for NASA to choose Nakuru, it's very deliberate because they're not trying to tell us we have secured our strongholds, now we are going to the opposition territory, as they like to refer themselves to. And it's going to be very important that this is going to be a launching pad for Governor Isaac Ruto. Because Governor Isaac Ruto, when he joined NASA, some of the promises he made was to create very strong competition in Kericho, Bomet, Narok, and Nakuru. And in Nakuru, when you look at the absolute numbers, if the Jubilee are going to run many candidates, that's Lee Kinyanjui, Moi, and the other gentleman called, the name has just disappeared, Kinudi Mbugwa, the current governor. It's very easy to split that vote to the benefit of Koros, who is a member of the Kipsigis community. And then it's unfortunate that when you are doing our analysis, we have to look at the tribal element, but we know that's where we have been reduced to. Because when Dr. Koros says on air that we have the numbers, obviously, he's gone through the voters' roll and he's seen the names from his community. And I even understand they're toying with getting his running mate to be a member of the minority community so that they can conquest like that. So really, I think the message NASA is sending to Jubilee is that this is your bedrock support, and we are coming, we are invading it. Mm-hmm. And depending on the turnout, and one hopes that people are not going to be given the sitting allowance or standing allowance, that people are not coming all the way from Kisumu or Nairobi to fill Afra. If you get the locals coming to Afra, then NASA will come up with a very strong message that even people from Jubilee are beginning to take our campaign seriously, and they're embracing us.
They have invited everybody across the political divide. If it has a very high turnout, will it be an indication of NASA getting some inroads into Jubilee strongholds?
Traditionally, Ben, turnout at political meetings do not necessarily translate into votes. Usually, even people who support the opposing side, when, for example, people who support Jubilee hear Raila is coming, they just want to come and see Raila. They say, I heard him speak. I heard him say this.
But the perception is important as well.
Yes, although it is important that people turn out in large numbers, historical indicators that we have had in the last, since multi-party came, that they don't automatically translate in votes. But the point I want to make about this particular Nakuru meeting is this. I am sincerely hoping that the NASA principals will be able to now pronounce in very, very simple and clear terms what it is that they propose to do differently from Jubilee. It's very well to go out there and accuse Jubilee of everything that is wrong. But I'm looking forward, as an alternative government, that they come out there and summarize the pillars of their manifesto. If they don't do that, to me, it will have been a wasted political opportunity.
But I think I agree with Prof. Chris Tairu asked both the gubernatorial candidate and the senatorial candidate what they are going to do about food shortage, about all this, but none of them actually responded concretely. They actually kept on accusing the government without saying anything that the NASA government is likely to do as an alternative. But then looking at the rally in itself, I'm looking at a situation where a campaign rally has so many things that it's meant to do. And I'm not so sure that this one is likely to attract many votes in Nakuru. And that may not even be their intention. The intention first is to do two things. One is to galvanize their lieutenants. The lieutenants who probably felt that this power-sharing deal did not support their kingpin would now have a feel that this guy is actually soldiering on. They have no problem in the arrangement. So putting them together in Nakuru, which is very significant in the geopolitics of this country, will actually bring them together. Then the other thing is to create that perception in their strongholds, and their strongholds are very far from Nakuru, that this is an outfit that has the blessing of even people who are very far from the strongholds. So that, because naturally what our campaign does is, it creates some sort of awareness among the voters that one of our own has a chance of making it. So when they pull a crowd in a very remote a place that is detached from the stronghold, they are likely to attract even the disillusioned voters, and therefore deal with the voter apathy, which is very critical for NASA. And then secondly, you also realize that what Prof is saying is coming to bear, that NASA has been going around, in very many public rallies, and I think they have an edge over Jubilee in that front. But where they have a problem is, immediately after the rally, you ask yourself, what were they saying? You realize that there is nothing that they're saying. And it is incumbent upon their strategies now to sit down and tease out talking points from their manifesto, so that ultimately, when they stand on a podium in a political rally, they articulate talking points that can be collapsed into critical issues in their manifesto. And the earlier they do that, the better.
All right. But Ben, allow me to say something, which is a contradiction to what Esbon is indicating. Kenyans, largely, the bulk of Kenyans, and he said that the UNGA may not be a factor in our politics. So for the members of, say, the Luo community, it matters not what Raila Odinga says. Whether he cracks a joke on Vitendawili, they will still vote for him. So sometimes even trying to deliver those messages during the political rallies, it may not really add value. Because the target audience is within, if it's people from, say, Jubilee from Kiambu, with the high cost of living today, because I suspect they also buy maize, it's unlikely that on August 8th, they'll wake up early in the morning to go and vote for Raila Odinga. Maybe at best, they'll abstain from the electoral process. They'll say they're not going to vote. But majority of us are very trouble in our thinking. That if you come from an NASA area and there's a food crisis in Kenya, or rather you come from a Jubilee area and there's a food crisis in Kenya, you'll become like Mwangi Kiunjuri. You'll blame the cartel that
Are you saying that our leaders should not have proper solutions just because the voting patterns are extremely tribal?
They need to have those solutions. And, President Kenyatta indicated that NASA shouldn't be, describing the problem as everybody does. They need to give us the solution. But if you go to Nakuru today and you start offering a solution, and they normally have these solutions, all of them, they have these solutions in their manifestos. But those manifestos count for nothing. That's why the two NASA candidates in Nakuru have no idea of their coalition's position on food security.
Right.
If there was an agreed point, they would be telling us. I'm not in any way suggesting that they shouldn't be giving us solutions. But you see, these politicians are politicians for one reason, that they understand the demographics. They know what the people are looking for. They know that if they want to discuss solutions, they'll have a media conference in Nairobi. But if they want to do the real politics as you describe it, then they'll just go there with the Vitendawili and the Misemos and the Adithis, and the audience will be happy. Because again, most of our voters are irrational.
All right. I want us to... Yes, let me...
May I just... I think if you look at this election as it's progressing, you realize that the election will be won by the elite few who understand issues and understand to what extent the Jubilee government has addressed issues of this country, and to what extent, the alternative NASA government is likely to do better. So I'm talking about that group, and I'm sure even NASA is aware that that group is there in Nakuru, that group is there in Nairobi. And once you have your tribal arithmetics done, you need now to target this group that will listen to issues, which NASA must try and reach out if they are together.
Yes, Ben. Let me just chip on what Hezbollah has said. On the contrary, I don't think what he's saying is true, is the true picture on the ground when it comes to voting. Ben will appreciate the fact that our country, in the nature of our participants, subjects, and the parochials is wired. We have very little at the apex. In the middle, we have fewer, but we have the majority at the base. Mm-hmm. And that's the nature of our segmentation. And I want to say that majority of those who go out and vote are the majority at the base. They are normally called as the parochials. Parochials normally would go to the people whom, whether they have the best manifesto or not, especially whoever gave them something small, they'll tilt the scales towards that person. And I'll tell you for sure, that's the same kind of voter capital that Sonko rode on in Nairobi. Majority of us who are calling ourselves elites did not go to vote. And majority of those who do vote are the parochials. And when he says that the team that's going to change the scales is the elite team, which it belongs to, I do not think that's the truth, because there are very few at the apex. Secondly, if you look at...
I let him respond to that.
Yes.
And you know the election is
it's all right. It's all right.
When you say that the elites don't vote, I don't know whether you're talking about the general election or the primaries, because Kenyans do vote. Then secondly, when you say that the elites are going to tilt, I didn't talk about the elites. Remember, I talked about Kenyans who are conscious, Kenyans who know...
Those are the elite?
Yes. No, they are not elites. I mean, conscious Kenyans are just Kenyans who have an understanding of the problems that bedevil this country. They are working towards the solutions to these problems, and they know the right direction to go. And to a large extent, if you look at the 8,000 votes that made President Uhuru Kenyatta the president, they are much more than that 8,000. They're actually in hundreds of thousands. People who will go and vote, not because of their tribe. They exist in Kenya.
Very few, Ben.
I want to say this. I agree that there are few.
All right. I want us to move on to something else. That is Raila's campaign team. We have a very few minutes. Since we're talking about NASA, there's this infographic that has been released detailing Raila's campaign team. Musalia Mudavadi as a campaign leader, given several team leaders from various regions. Ahmed Abdullahi, the Wajir governor, been in charge of Northeastern. Kivuda Kibwana in charge of Ukambani. Evans Kidero in charge of Nairobi. Hassan Joho in charge of the coast. Patrick Haimba, the Trans Nzoia governor, in charge of the North Rift. Josephat Nanok, also the North Rift. Wycliffe Oparanya in charge of Western. Anyang' Nyong'o in charge of Nyanza, and James Ongwae in charge of Kisii. What is your take on this matter? I'll come to you, Prof.
Well, you know,
it's a competent team.
You know, the first time I saw that, I was hoping to see something new, something that would be earth-shaking, but that's nothing, because that infographic simply talks about the governors within the NASA area who are running for particular positions. And for the governors to be campaigning for their NASA presidential candidates, that's one, it's a no-brainer. I mean, it's a given. One would have expected the architect of that infographic to give us something new that you can say, wow, eureka, that you've got new names and what they bring to the table. For instance, when you say that Governor Ongwae is going to be in charge of the NASA campaigns in Kisii and Nyagarama in Nyamira, then who else were you expecting to be in charge of the campaign? Because those are the two preeminent politicians running for political seats. So really there is nothing new. But the new thing there is the fact that you have Musalia Mudavadi, who is seen to be a game changer. And maybe another name missing there is Governor Isaac Ruto, because those are the two game changers in the NASA mathematics. But looking at all those other names, they really, I think that's the work of a lazy journalist who want to go the extra mile and really find out who is driving this campaign.
All right.
Yeah, I thank you very much, Ben. I had also seen the infographic. My disappointment with it was that there are people who are responsible for certain very huge portions of the support electorate. For example, I would have expected, for purposes of succession planning, that there will be a youth mobilizer who is reporting directly to the presidential candidate, so that he could be able to, that's what would bring a change in the status quo. Then I would expect a youth women leader who would be able also to be mobilizing the youth, who are the people most impacted negatively in the current political dispensation. So the current arrangement, and is unfortunate, I was referring to the governors that have been appointed. Now, some of them are having serious political challenges on the ground. Now, you are also asking them to go out there and do the extra mile and recruit these other people, including people who are challenging the authority to help them. Now, to me, if this was a working document, a draft document, fine, but it requires serious amendments to be able to capture, the tipping units in any political support platform.
Right.
There are groups that tip the election in a particular way. This particular one needs a lot of amendments.
Let me just buttress that
I've not
point.
commented on this, Ben.
All right, yes, Brian,
Personally,
then I'll
I
come to you.
expected the big fish to be part of this organogram. I expected Raila to be spearheading a certain section. I expected Kalonzo also to take a role, Mudavadi, Ruto, and also for the Kenya chair, Wetangula. By picking candidates, gubernatorial candidates for that matter, to me, it's actually elevating some governors, at a higher level compared to others. And this will also have its own frictions and on the ground. For instance, if you go to Kambani, why would Malombe feel not, why would he feel so shortchanged if he's not given that mantle, but Kibwana has been given that one? Why would Ongwae, is it Ongwae? Ongwae feel more superior or be elevated than other governors in the larger Kisii County? And therefore, region, or is it a Southern Nyanza? Southern Nyanza for that matter. So I would have seen a situation where at least that issue of equality being actually administered in terms of actually ensuring that all governors feel part and parcel of this process. But when you give some higher tasks than others, and that was something that Jubilee experienced at some point before they even dismantled the 61 team that had been formed to spearhead the same process. So,
but how did you want Raila to be part of his own campaign team?
He would be at the apex, of course, and then
he's a candidate.
He's a candidate, but he can also manage the other team members in a better way.
All right.
But allow me to say, having participated in a presidential campaign once, that if a journalist can access information on the key campaign architects, the key players, then you know for a fact that campaign has collapsed. So again, it would be naive for us to expect that you get a journalist have intimate knowledge. And even assuming, say, Professor Tumbo is running a certain campaign, the information he'll be giving a journalist as who is running the campaign, who is holding a particular position, would be leading you in the wrong direction so that you lose your focus. Now, if Jubilee is going to rely on this information, that Governor Ongwae is in charge of the campaign in Kisii and Kivuda Kibwana, then it's going to be, a disaster.
Yes.
The people who are running this campaign would probably be known after elections, maybe on the 9th. And the people you'll see coming to the media saying, I was in charge of social media, I was in charge of messaging, those will be the socialites. The people who really run these campaigns are never, ever
But
known.
we've had this information beforehand, and after the elections, we've been right. Maybe we have very good journalists.
What this
strategy
is that there is a technocrat that is working behind this team.
Of course.
And that one, we have no business knowing that. They have no business peeping into the front end. But at the front end, if this is the team running the campaign, there's nothing refreshing. I think that is what we are agreeing on. Because if Raila is not campaigning because he's the candidate, then why is Ongwae campaigning? Exactly. Why is he in charge of Kisii? Because he'll be more interested in ensuring that he becomes the governor than ensuring that Raila becomes the president. I expected,
you agree with my take?
I do agree with your take. I expected that they would have some of these disgruntled and dissenting voices brought on board and told that now you have a stake in this campaign so that they are assured of the rewards if NASA forms. They'll have an incentive to work. I expected refreshing names of young people, and there are many in ODM, Wiper, who feel disgruntled. There are many who are very sharp in Wiper, for instance, and I expected them to spearhead this.
Yeah, I was going to add that there are two things that are important in a project of this type. One of them, the primary one, is secrecy. There is a thing. Do we, as the public, do we need to know this? There is no need for us to be told this.
Strategy.
That's the first one. The second one is global. The second aspect of a project like this is deceit. When you're running against an opponent that is well-oiled like Jubilee, you can't hold the people who are going to, you can't take the leaders of the tactical teams and put them out there and tell them that, and then fall back and say they're not going to be whipped out of their pants. So in terms of strategy, for me,
This is a no-brainer.
I would want to use a polite word, but this is just nonsense.
Well,
All right. Fair
you know,
enough.
Ben, as I indicated, with the benefit of having participated in a real campaign, the actual people who run the campaign are faceless. You never, ever get to see them.
Yeah.
I mean, for instance, do you think that Raphael Tuju is running the Jubilee campaign? No. Tuju is given a media statement to release at 1 o'clock. The people who are running the actual campaign, you will never ever to see them. And if Brian expects that
doesn't
Tuju
mean
will
you
go and parade them at Uhuru Park for all and sundry to see, it will never happen.
I agree with that, but that doesn't mean we can't know who they are.
Yeah.
And
Probability
if you know who they
of
are,
the most experienced investigative journalists in the entire world would never ever know who is running any campaign. If they get to know who is running that campaign, then
You are underestimating the power of our journalists.
I differ on this.
you see, it's a very small country.
Yes,
we
it
know
is.
everybody.
It's a
we
very
know-
small country.
But anyway, yeah.
It's impossible to do anything with an impact in Kenya without being tracked. It's impossible. I mean, in this era,
It's a small world.
The old, you see, what Dismas is describing is that this may not include all the key players.
Exactly.
Key
The
players.
technocrats are underneath.
Yeah,
Hidden there.
they're always there
At the background.
and then they are what you call
The faces.
No, the kingmakers. They are kingmakers for each candidate. They are the people who keep saying push this one's here,
No,
push
that's
this
why-
one
that's
here,
why I have a problem
create
with
space
them
for
now.
this one. But the key thing is, I doubt very strongly that NASA would put their most reliable, their most competent operators in the open market
All right.
for auction.
All right, fair enough. I promise that we will be naming those people very shortly.
that will be before the campaign.
And before the campaign.
Before the
Yes.
campaign.
And we'll place a bet on it.
Yes.
If you
I love taking those bets.
Right, let's now talk about the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission's preparedness for the elections. That is in 85 days' time. IBC is now engaged in a voter verification exercise that will be ongoing for the next 30 days. Let's take a look at that.
It is less than 3 months to go before Kenyans go to the ballot to elect their next set of leaders in the second general election under the new constitutional dispensation. Focus now shifts to the electoral body, the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. And the question begs, just how prepared is the IEBC in conducting this year's polls?
The Commission has developed a results management framework which clarifies the procedure the Commission shall follow in ensuring transparency and accountability in election results management.
Going by the new relatively tight IBC timelines, the Commission has begun the process of verifying the voters' details before the final register is put together. The process is taking place in all the 290 constituencies. Voters are required to visit the verification centers and confirm whether their details are correct and that their names are on the IBC register. In the meantime, KPMG has embarked on a cleanup and audit of the registers simultaneously.
We are running the two processes, what in law you say pari passu, side by side, so that whatever errors we find, we shall correct them. Remember, KPMG is not correcting the register. They are doing an audit. An audit, they simply identify if there are issues and they write a report, and we shall also implement the report as far as it concerns the register.
This is expected to continue until the 9th of June. The Commission is then set to gazette the names and symbols of persons intending to contest in the election as independent candidates by 13th May. May 14th, which will be on Sunday, will be the last day for political parties intending to participate in the general election to submit party lists to the commission. The date was moved from the 10th. Despite campaigns having seemingly kicked off, the campaign period will officially commence on the 28th of May and cease on the 5th of August, 48 hours to the general elections.
Independent candidates and political party aspirants have to submit their nomination papers for clearance to the Commission's returning officers at the constituency level between 1st of June and 2nd of June.
Even as the Commission continues to test the Kenya Integrated Elections Management System, KIEMS, that will entail the fingerprints and the facial image of every registered voter, as well as transmit the results, it is yet to be decided which company will be awarded the 2.5 billion shillings printing tender. The delay coming after the High Court quashed the contract awarded to Algra Rail Printing and Publishing Company on grounds that the Commission was not properly constituted at the time the deal was signed.
In a democracy, particularly where the Constitution itself says that we are a constitutional democracy, there is no better referee and repository of the rights and freedoms of the people than the courts.
What is manifesting itself here as a legal problem is essentially a political and social problem. We have no legal problem. What we have is we have a low threshold of trust.
A total of 13 firms indicated their interest, but last week, only 8 had returned their bids.
CORD can make all the noise they want, and what CORD is trying to do is that they know they have lost the general election. And we, the Jubilee Coalition, I want to say it very categorically, the postponement of the general election is not visible.
Presidential candidates have to submit their nomination papers for clearance by IEBC between the 28th and 29th of May this year, while other candidates for various elective positions should submit their certificates at the Commission's returning officers at the county level between 28th May and 22nd June. The Commission has gazetted 290 staff to serve as constituency returning officers and 47 returning officers.
So according to the IEBC, about 19.5 million registered voters on the voter register. Two things coming out from this. First one is the cleanup, audit of the voter register. The other one is verification by voters that their details have been entered correctly by the IEBC on the system. Let me start with you, Hesbon. Let's start with the audits and cleanup of the voter register by KPMG, which was opposed to initially by the opposition. What do you think is going to be the impact of this? Is this going to remove all the doubts that has been?
I think even after the audit by KPMG, which is a reputable company, you would expect them to do a great job. There is a lot that IBC has to do, because what KPMG is going to do is simply to raise exceptions, point out, flaws in the voter register, upon which now IBC has to come in. And I think the chairman has said it clearly that it is now after the raising of those exceptions that they'll come in now and deal with the issues that have been raised. And there is the crux of the matter, that it is not what IBC is doing, but whether whatever they are doing is going to be perceived as the right thing and what will ensure that we have a free, fair, and credible election. And I think the onus is on IBC to keep the public in the loop, to engage all the stakeholders, so that even after KPMG is done with the process, we are in the loop. We understand what they are doing, what was raised, and how they are going to deal with it. From what I said, I think IBC, compared to what happened to us the run-up to the last general election, they are actually doing a great job to some extent, though there is a lot they can do. For the simple reason that if you look at the voter verification, for instance, it's coming way too early. This is 85 days before the election. In the last election, I think it was a few weeks to the election, if I'm not wrong. And now, the onus again is on all the stakeholders, political parties and other civic education partners, to ensure that the voter, or generally the electorate, understands their role in verification, so that it makes the process on 8th of August fairly easy. You know where you're voting, and you simply go and you know how to use the gadgets.
Yeah. Yes, Ben.
Brian, do you think now Kenyans can have confidence in the IEBC, the verification and the audits?
I think it's a process. It's not an incident where the ability to give people confidence is just a step at a step. And I want to say that the process of photo verification by KPMG will offer that kind of platform where we are able now to talk from an informed perspective. Ben, you have had this narrative of 10 million plus strong, 10 million strong from NASA and also 12 million from Jubilee, you know, in the hope of convincing masses that we have the numbers. But after KPMG gives the final verdict in terms of the actual numbers that are there, is when now we can have this narrative of 10 million plus or 12 million plus and all that. And again, I want to say that without preempting on what you are about to ask is whether IBC is really on track. I want to say that from where I sit, I have confidence in whatever they are doing. Remember, initially we could see IBC working in isolation, in a sort of cocoon. But I'm sure now, with the entry of what they have formed as a Chapter 6 working group, I'm sure Dismas has not had that before. They have come with a team of a pool of stakeholders, the DPP included there, ESCC included, IBC there, and other stakeholders, and also the IG, the Office of the IG, where they are working on all the aspects on a frontier which offers that approach where everything, every gap, every deficiency is tackled. And therefore, it's, for me, is a smooth sail as we advance towards August.
All right. Verification and audit aside, the issues from the last elections, with the major issues with the electronic voter identification device, do you think those issues have been rectified by IEBC? They also did launch the new system now, the Kenya Integrated Election Management System, KIEMS.
Clearly, effort has been made and is in progress, is work in progress. But what I would like to discuss briefly are three aspects. One, it would have been nice to know the operating framework content to be used by the outsourced consultant, KPMG.
Right.
The framework is important. The reason being that one of the preliminary objections raised to their participation, all right, is the staffing complement the members who work for KPMG. Like our ethnic problem, there was an allegation that one ethnic group actually runs KPMG. that was initially where the problem started. So for me, whether they are there, you can't dismiss them. You expect them, one, to be professional, two, also to consider that they have a political interest. So it's a balance that they must exercise. Two, it must, the Electoral Commission must require of them utmost professionalism so that their recommendations are not in doubt. Three, when you look at IBC itself, one of the commendable things you can see now, that they are actually professionally trained, experienced managers of elections that are among the commissioners. They regularly come to explain themselves on critical matters that might be in dispute. Now, from that perspective, this one is operating differently from the previous one. The previous one spent time dealing mainly with the political issues. When you ask questions about technical issues, they told you there was no problem. Everything is under control. Now, finally, I want to say this. For all practical purposes, all of us of goodwill must give IBC support. You know, you can't go to watch a match to support your team when you do not have confidence in the referee. So we have an obligation as citizens to support the effort of IBC, which is doing its best, but is likely to have certain constraints. Clearly, these issues of a court order here, a court order there, however organized you are, this is likely to detract from your effort to deliver a completely free and fair election. But in my opinion, the progress they are making is commendable, and we need to give them continued support.
This must be a verdict of the Chebukati's IEBC, 85 days to the election?
I think the IBC has made very good progress. The challenge probably is communication, but I understand that is being sorted out. Because, you know, they've been creating what we've been talking in this show of those predictable systems for unpredictable outcomes. Right. And they've had a challenge in their communications, but I understand that's been sorted out. Mm-hmm. But coming to the voter register, KPMG can only do a good job if they get the right kind of information. So I'm not sure whether or not the registrar of persons is giving them real-time data on the deaths happening in Kenya. Because, you know, KPMG is going to rely on information provided by the government. So I don't know whether the registrar of person is giving them the right information. Then number two, KPMG should share with the entire nation the methodology they're using to achieve their objective. Right. So that every single Kenyan can actually understand the steps. They must tell us the critical path analysis and how it's coming through. So that even as a normal Kenyan who wants to participate in the voting process, you've got a faith in that. And then number three, I think we misunderstood when the working group said that we needed to audit that register. KPMG and other organizations came up because they are referred to as auditors and they're financial auditors. And I don't recall whether KPMG has done this thing anywhere else. We needed competent auditors who will be able to hit the ground running right from day one. But coming to the state of preparedness, I'm surprised that Hezbollah is complaining that right now we are doing voter verification well in advance. That's the best practice. That's the way it's supposed to do. That's the way it's supposed to be done. We should do the...
Don't just complain.
No, it's that it's coming up in advance. So that's number one. And then number two, they're also testing the technology. You recall, during the last election, technology arrived on a Monday morning, and we had elections the same day in the evening. You know, that's a figure of speech. But you know, the technology came very late in the day. We were not even able to test it to be sure that it was compatible. Never mind that we had two different technology suppliers. And I understand that one has been addressed. And then number three, maybe we need to keep on reminding now IBC that every individual works at IBC, whether it's a staffer, whether you are a contractor, there is the criminal liability that if you do any mistake this time round, it's you and you alone who is going to be punished.
All right,
who is
we
going
have
to
2 minutes. So one final question for everyone. What are you expecting in this electioneering period? From what we know so far, the preparedness by the IEBC, the preparations, the current state politically, what are your expectations on the 8th of August?
Thank you, Ben. Personally, with the new dynamics and the changing of the political landscape, I expect a runoff. And the reason being that last week or late last week, you have seen a group of individuals coming together to form the so-called third force, or third way for that matter. And they according to the composition of that team, Ben, I think they are going to, garner some pockets here, I mean, in terms of votes from here and there, and they are likely to tilt their skills completely. While we want to believe that it will be a two-horse race, I want to say that the entry of these guys is going to complicate matters, a little bit. You remember last time Jubilee won on a very small margin from the 50+1 sort of a point, and with entry of the third force, we are likely to see that matrix being complicated a little bit, and therefore this might spring a runoff, and with the runoff, now there's a discussion for another day.
So runoff. Hezbollah, we have 18 presidential candidates. What are your expectations?
No, there are only 2 presidential candidates. I think the rest are giving them good company. So what I'm expecting, one, I'm expecting that IBC will keep up the good job and ensure that it's not just about the technology, but more so about the credibility, so that whatever they are doing, Kenyans believe that they are doing the right thing in the interest of this country. And having said that, I think I'm expecting an outright winner. If the election is free and fair, I'm expecting an outright winner. In which case, I'm also expecting the 2 presidential candidates, no runoff, to articulate themselves so that Kenyans vote on issues.
All right.
Now, thank you, Ben. First and foremost, I think IBC is ahead of the political parties in terms of preparedness for the election. That to me, is the status at the moment. 2, clearly, when you look at the whole scenario, there is something that is emerging. They're getting 25% in 25 counties.
24.
That is beginning to emerge as a major challenge, and is likely to be one of the drivers of the runoff that is anticipated.
So
in fact, I on this one, for once, I agree with Udwana Mutie, that there is a possibility of a runoff unless something very special happens.
All right. 30
between now and
seconds,
then.
Dismas.
Well, I'm hoping that as we go to the general elections, Kenyans will sit down and ask themselves one fundamental question. Are you better off 4 years today? If the answer is in the affirmative, you retain Jubilee. If it's negative, you vote in NASA. Because it's now very clear that from the kind of leadership you have, it actually affects your kitchen table economics.
Right.
Because, for people who would plan maybe to be buying sugar maybe at 200 per month, now you have to revise your budget upwards. And these are some of the issues that we need to interrogate, as Esbon says, for the few conscious
Choices of
voters.
consequences.
Yeah, that you take a decision knowing very well.
Right.
You recall what President Moi used to say, siasa mbaya, maisha mbaya.
Right.
Maybe we should now begin discussing that into detail and place it in context
All
of
right.
Jubilee. And
Thank you.
He has
Thank
not,
you,
he has not
gentlemen.
told us whether there will be an outright winner or a runoff.
There's going to be no runoff. You have got 2 presidential candidates and 16
So you're the only one
ceremonial
who's
candidates.
predicting a
No, with
runoff.
him, we
Well,
have agreed.
yourself and Professor.
Yes.
All right, thank you so much, gentlemen. Dismas Mokwo,